Speaker. United States Senator Ted Cruz represents 28 million Texans. He is a passionate fighter for limited government and economic freedom, has authored 39 legislative measures signed into law, including expanding 529 college savings accounts to allow parents to save K-12 public, private, and religious education to pay for expenses. Senator Cruz is a graduate of Princeton University and Harvard Law School, a former law clerk to Chief Justice William Rehnquist and former Solicitor General of Texas. Senator Cruz, it's such a privilege to have you with us today, sir. The floor is yours.
Well, good morning. It is great to be with you. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be part of this discussion, and thank you for engaging on the very important issues surrounding homeschooling. It's a little hard to imagine if we were to think back 6 months ago, if someone were to suggest that every parent in America and many people across the globe would suddenly and instantaneously all be homeschooling. That would be hard to imagine. And yet a global pandemic has put a great many parents in the position of suddenly having their kids at school, doing distance learning to be sure, and not full-on homeschooling. But I can say, as I sit here from my living room in Houston, Texas, that for the past 2.5 months, I've been working from home. My wife Heidi's been working from home, and our 9-year-old daughter and 12-year-old daughter have both been doing distance learning from home, one at the dining room table, the other up in her room. And that has been an extraordinary external stimulus that has impacted the world in many respects, but it's impacted education. And obviously a great many of the people who are distance learning now involuntarily, when the pandemic subsides and we defeat the virus, which we will choose to return to whatever schooling options they were using. But I'm going to suggest this also presents an opportunity. When you have tens of millions of people suddenly needing to help educate their students at home, you have an opportunity for people to, number one, experience the demands it takes in terms of time and energy and love and trying to figure out 3rd grade or 6th grade math, none of which are easy, even for those who do it professionally full time. We also have an opportunity in terms of the technology that's being developed. I do think the consequences of this crisis is that we're going to see more and more distance learning tools, more and more classes online, more and more e-commerce. 6 months ago, we would not likely have been doing a Zoom conference call. This now, I don't know about your day, but I think I've got about 7 of these Zoom conference calls, one after the other after the other. That's going to be an ongoing change going forward. I think that's a positive opportunity for homeschooling in terms of bringing resources to parents and kids. There's also a threat. Many of those in power, many academic elites view homeschooling as a fundamental threat to their power. Just in the last couple of months, there was a cover story in Harvard University's magazine by law professor Elizabeth Bartholet. I'm an alumnus of Harvard Law School, and I have to admit I'm embarrassed of the institution where I did my legal training, because this article drips with condescension and drips with contempt for homeschoolers. The article all but describes any parent who would choose to homeschool their children as an ignorant, bigoted, racist rube who believes in crazy religious ideas. And by the way, by crazy religious ideas, what the article really says is who believes in God. Sadly, many of our elite academic institutions at the university level have taken the enlightened view that if any person is a person of faith, they're obviously an idiot. That is something to beware of, because the premise of this article is that parents don't have the right to train their children, that the government has the right to take the children and train the children and teach the children and make sure they don't learn those crazy views of the parents. And I have to say, one of the fundamental liberties that's protected under the United States Constitution, but it is also a fundamental liberty of mankind, is the right of parents to raise their children. I believe most parents love their kids, and it's a question of fundamental liberty to be able to raise and teach and train your children to the best of your ability. Homeschooling is not a choice for everyone. It is an enormous commitment of time. The homeschoolers whom I know, and I have many dear, dear friends who have schooled, devote years and years of their life around the clock. They pour in love and prayers and work. And the kids come out, we just heard a minute ago, but the kids that come out through homeschooling over and over again are achieving academically at higher levels than the kids who are using more traditional schooling routes. And so I think we should recognize the threat, because what was so clear about this Harvard article last couple of months was the arrogant condescension and the fear that parents might have some power to train their own children. That danger we should be well aware of, but it's not a pretty look. It is, I've tried actually to highlight that, to show the contempt they have for parents to rear our children. Let me say also that there are opportunities. The biggest legislative accomplishment that I have been able to achieve in my 8 years in the U.S. Senate is legislation expanding educational choice. And in particular, this was in 2017, it was during the tax cut debate. I introduced an amendment to expand what are called College 529 savings plans. These are tax advantage savings plans where parents and grandparents, they can save their own money for college expenses, and they can grow in a tax advantage way. I introduced an amendment that expanded College 529 saving plans to now include K through 12 education, to include public school, private school, parochial school, religious school. Every parent can save up to $10,000 per child per year of their own money in a tax advantage account and use it for educational expenses. Now, as I drafted the amendment, I included homeschoolers in there, that homeschoolers incur lots of expenses and they ought to be able to save in a tax advantaged account. That was in the amendment, and I will tell you, it was unfortunate to see what happened. Senate Democrats raised a procedural objection, and I won't get into the arcane Senate procedure, but they had a narrow procedural objection to homeschoolers and to children with disabilities. And they went to the Senate parliamentarian, and I went and argued against them and fought. In fact, one of the arguments Senate Democrats had against the entire amendment, they tried to get the entire amendment thrown out, is they said the problem is this will be too popular. Parents will like this too much, so we can't do it because it undermines our control over education. Well, they didn't succeed in throwing out the entire amendment, but they did sadly succeed in throwing out homeschoolers, carving them out of the amendment, and carving out children with disabilities who need special therapies and assistance. Both of them were cruelly carved out. That bill ended up passing on the United States Senate floor by a vote of 50 to 50, evenly divided, which meant the Vice President of the United States had to come down to the Senate floor at 1 in the morning. It was a late night vote, and cast the tie-breaking vote. And with that, we passed the most far-reaching federal school choice legislation that has ever passed into law. And so for the policymakers from other countries, I want to encourage you, one of the tools that is potent, I continue working to expand 529s to include homeschoolers, to provide new tools, but allowing people to have tax-advantaged accounts so that they can save the resources to devote to education is a powerful, powerful tool. And I want to encourage the policymakers on this account to take advantage of that tool where they can.
Thank you, Senator Cruz. We certainly appreciate your support of homeschooling in the United States, and we'll be there to support you next time you get a chance to run this 529 legislation, which we do think is a fair thing. Everyone should be treated the same. Thank you for doing that. Our next